The next day, a 28-second video appeared online. The sound and picture quality weren't ideal, but they didn't need to be. The wobbly, vertical video told a strong story. Officer Trent Bayless and Special Agent Deshaun Rucker were standing right in front of each other. Their words were calm, but you could feel the tension in the air. Rucker didn't move. He didn't shout or use bad language. He just stood there, spoke quietly, and let his presence speak for itself. A uniformed cop in the grocery store aisle near the butter and eggs questioned his authority at the same time. This man taught a cop more with silence than some people do with a badge, the video said. By lunchtime, it had been seen more than 60,000 times. A lot of people said, "Why does it always happen like this? He's lucky it didn't end in death." The brother stayed calm. That's strength. We should talk about this kind of behavior more regularly. Captain Rollman sat in front of the clip in a quiet office downtown and watched it over and over. His face was bland and unreadable as he took it all in. He had already read Bayless's report and looked over the logs, but this was real-time embarrassment that was being shown all over the internet. It wasn't just a faulty lens or a simple mistake. It was a break in the system. He took up the phone and called Internal Affairs. Rucker, on the other hand, was sitting at his desk across town, drinking lukewarm coffee and staring at the still snapshot of Trina Delmore's burner ping. He wasn't thinking about what was going on. The door opened, and Corbin walked in with a flash disc. She laid the clip on his desk and added, "It's going around. Local news got a hold of it. You're a meme now." Rucker did not smile. Corbin inquired, "Are you okay?" "Yes," he answered, but there was something else in his voice. "I just wish it hadn't happened at all." Corbin sat down. "We did our job. It was quiet, legal, and measured. We didn't go too far. That's what people needed to see, especially now." Rucker nodded, but he wasn't really paying attention. He was still thinking about the aim. "We'll get her," he said. They were quiet. Not simply coworkers anymore. Now they're more than just agents. They saw something that had grown too common. Finally, Rucker spoke up. "Do you think Bayless will change after this?" Corbin said, "I don't know. But I think he finally saw himself clearly. That's more than most people ever do." Trina Delmore's burner went off again later that week. This time it was in South Carolina, at Florence. Local agents took over the trail and discreetly and meticulously rebuilt a sting. Rucker and Corbin weren't there when the operation went down, but their fingerprints were all over it. The papers they had gathered, the videos Donna had saved, the license plate logs, the angles of the monitoring cameras, all of it was important. Trina had 4 IDs, 3 burner phones, and a laptop full of fake vendor applications when she was ultimately caught. Her whole business, which she pretended was a farm product provider, had been laundering more than $400,000 through phony EBT transactions. She never saw Rucker again, but he read the report of her arrest as it was unfinished business. Bayless, on the other hand, finished his disciplinary training and was given administrative tasks for the time being. No punishment or demotion, but the department psychologist had to talk to the person for a long time and do 3 months of de-escalation classes. No one called it justice, but it was something. The clip faded away like they all do, and it became another item in the growing collection of events that people knew were genuine but hoped didn't happen so often. But something had changed. Not in the news, but in the aisles, where people stopped and looked a little longer. Where not saying anything felt like a statement. Where a quiet voice might rip through a badge's weight like it was paper. The actual tale wasn't Trina's escape or Bayless's mistake. It was a moment in the midst of a grocery store when professionalism and judgment met and lost. It was about the strength of self-control, the type that doesn't come with flashing lights, but with understanding who you are, even when no one else does. And that's a lesson you should always keep in mind. Every aisle is a mirror, and we all have to gaze at some point. If this story made you feel something, think about something, or remember something that needs to change, click subscribe. These stories are real. They're real, and the more we talk about them, the less likely we are to do them again. And just when you think you've seen it all, Trump believed it would be another simple town hall. But Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was about to make sure that didn't happen. People started to gather outside the Desert Horizon Civic Center just after the sun went down in Phoenix. This wasn't a protest or a rally, at least not yet. It was the night everyone had been waiting for, the live national town hall with President Donald Trump. It wasn't just the size or the buzz that made this one distinct. It was who was seated opposite from him, Representative Jasmine Crockett. She was going to put the president to the test, and she was known for her sharp tongue, airtight arguments, and no-nonsense mastery of facts. ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, and 2 streaming services were all showing the event live. There hadn't been as much planning for a town hall since the early 2000s. The audience was restless, security was tight, and phones were already out. The air was dense within, cameras set up from every angle, with lights bouncing off the glass podiums. Brent Lawson, a well-known journalist, was the moderator and stood in the middle of the stage attempting to look calm. But even he knew this wouldn't be a normal night. When Trump came out, the crowd stopped cheering and gave him a standing ovation. He smiled, gave the thumbs-up sign, and sat down. The panelists, including Jasmine Crockett, came in a few minutes later. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. She just glanced forward. The format was easy. Each participant had 10 minutes to talk about an important problem. After that, Trump would answer, and there would be a short back and forth. Simple to follow, yet hard to handle. Brent started with several questions he had already put down: public safety, border security, and the economy becoming better. Trump replied with his typical claims: "We've had the biggest job growth in the history of the country." A few polite claps followed. "Our crime rate is way down." Crockett's time came next. Mr. President," she said, moving her microphone but not her notes. The room changed when someone stated, "What you just said sounds good, but sounding good isn't the same as being true." She bent over. "You said we have the biggest job growth in history, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the U.S. added more net jobs between 2010 and 2016 than in the last 4 years put together. That's not just an opinion. It's information from your own government." Trump laughed. "That depends on what you mean by growth. I'm not comparing apples to oranges. People are talking about what you said and the numbers." A cameraman focused in on Trump's face, which had lost some of its earlier calmness. Then she struck him with more. "You said crime is down, but here's a chart from the Justice Department that shows violent crime actually went up last year in mid-sized cities." Trump looked at the chart with a squint but didn't say anything. The crowd was on edge, waiting for the next move. "And about the border," Crockett went on. "You say it's the safest it's been in 50 years, but last July, Customs and Border Protection reported the most monthly migrant encounters ever, over 250,000. That's not safer. That's overwhelmed." She wasn't done. "It's not that I disagree with your policies. It's that I want you to be held to the same standard as the rest of us." The quiet was deafening. Jasmine reached for a piece of paper and put it on the desk. "This is a transcript of a meeting you had with Republican governors, where you said, 'We're still not where we want to be on employment numbers.'" Trump blinked. The crowd murmured. Brent attempted to say something, but Jasmine wasn't done. She took out another piece of paper. "This is the Homeland Security Quarterly Brief. It says that border agents are short on resources and working in crisis mode. But you didn't say that tonight." Trump was quiet now. Jasmine leaned in, as if she were only talking to one person instead of millions. "I represent individuals in Dallas, El Paso, Amarillo, those who work night shifts, clean hospitals, and drive rigs through snowstorms. They don't have time to check the facts and the sound bites. They depend on us, on you, to tell them the truth." The audience was with her now. The room was quiet. Then she took out one last card, a little USB stick. She responded in a calm voice, "Winning isn't the same as being right, and being honest doesn't mean being loud." And just like that, the truth was out in the open. The scene changed. A 14-minute recording of an inside meeting from Trump's campaign team was leaked to a journalist and confirmed to be real. The recording showed campaign strategists in Tampa coming up with ways to spin the monthly job data before the debate in October. They talked on what to leave out, what to focus on, and how to change the figures so that the public could see what they wanted them to see. Jasmine carefully got ready for her next surprise. "This," she began, holding out a piece of paper, "is the truth you've been hiding." The room went silent. Trump's lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked at the recording, and the anxiety grew. Brent, who looked astonished, mumbled, "That's against the law." His eyes were wide open, and he stared at Jasmine as if she had just dropped a bomb. Trump mumbled, "You can't just—" And then his voice trailed off, but it was clear that he was uncomfortable. Jasmine stayed calm. "I didn't record it," she said, her voice firm. "One of your old employees did. They emailed it to a journalist without giving their name, and the journalist confirmed that it was real. I have permission to quote it, and I plan to." Brent, the moderator, paused, his voice getting tighter. "Congresswoman," Jasmine calmly but firmly cut him off. "You can turn off my mic if you need to, but the truth is already out there." Something unexpected happened as Brent tried to get control back. The video recorded President Trump leaning back in his chair and looking shaken. He seemed like he was losing his cool, and his normal confidence was fading in front of millions of people. For everyone watching at home, the break felt like just another commercial break, but for many in the studio, time stood still. There was no small conversation. You can't reach for water. Not short stretches. Just quiet, dense, and heavy with excitement. Jasmine sat there with her arms crossed and her eyes on Trump. She was calm and steady. Trump's team behind the camera spoke to each other to attempt to keep things steady while he tapped his index finger on the table in time. Brent felt a change in the room's mood and shuffled his note cards, his mind racing. This was not going to be a normal town hall debate. And through his earpiece, producers were immediately giving him news. Crockett Facts was trending on social media. Jasmine's words were flying around, and screenshots of the papers she held up were going viral. Jasmine was everywhere. The word Crockett Facts was trending on Twitter in the U.S. at the time, but that wasn't even the main story yet. The camera light blinked red when the break was over. They were back in business. Brent cleared his throat and spoke to the crowd. "Welcome back. We're still having a live town hall meeting with President Donald Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. We heard from both sides before the break." Trump stopped him. "We listened to a talk. Now, let's get back to the real world." Brent didn't say anything. He said, "Okay, let's keep going with our policy panel. You mentioned a private audio clip from a campaign before, Congresswoman. Someone told me that we can't go ahead unless we get legal clearance. I have it in writing," Jasmine remarked as she slipped a piece of paper over the table. Delano's lawyer said it was okay to use part of the quote under the Fair Use Act. "This morning I checked." Brent blinked in shock. "Okay, go ahead." Jasmine didn't yell. Her tranquility gave her strength. She kept staring at Trump and said, "The quote is from your Tampa campaign strategy meeting. 2 months ago, your senior advisor, Trent Marvel, was there, but you weren't. He remarked, and I quote, 'No matter what the numbers are, we're going to frame the next job report as a win. We call it historic growth if it's up. We say we're getting better faster than we thought if it's down.'" She stopped, letting the weight of her words sink in. She said, "That's not just spin. That's planned misdirection." Trump's face got harder, but he didn't say anything. The room was quiet. The weight of her words was still in the air. Then Trump chuckled, trying to change the subject. "Are you quoting a staff member? That's your big news?" "That's nothing. You based your whole argument tonight on staffers and summaries." Jasmine didn't move. "What's the difference?" "But I brought proof." Trump leaned forward to try to get back on his feet. "You need a soundbite badly." "No," she said, her voice firm. "I'm just allergic to gaslighting." The word hit home. Gaslighting. It hit the ground hard, and the energy in the room changed. People didn't clap, but they looked at Trump. To Jasmine, the stakes had just gone up. Brent, who was working hard to get the conversation back on track, said, "Let's keep the conversation focused on issues." Jasmine was not finished. She held up the paper and stated, "The problem is that we've made it normal for people to lie to our faces and smile while they do it. We aren't numb. We're just worn out. But being weary doesn't entail being blind." Trump laughed. "You think you can speak for tired people? Please." Jasmine didn't even blink. "I speak for those who can't afford to get the truth wrong." Brent's voice got tighter as the pressure grew. "Now we'll move on to the next question from the audience." A woman in the front row got up. She was in her late 40s, had spectacles, and a navy blue blouse with a small button that said, "Proud daughter of a postal worker." She appeared apprehensive but calm as she spoke to the panel. She started by saying, "I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I voted both ways. But when I see someone attempting to tell the truth and getting made fun of for it, I don't think this is about politics anymore." She stopped and looked straight ahead. "So I guess my question is, when do we stop acting like the truth is something we can change?" There was no quick response. There was a lot of tension in the air, and the room was quiet. Trump, always the showman, smiled graciously. "Ma'am, I hear you, but a lot of what you're saying is just spin in a nice folder. Let's not pretend that numbers don't get cherry-picked." Jasmine nodded once and kept her eyes on him. "That's why I brought the whole tree, not just the cherries." People in the audience moved. Some leaned forward, some crossed their arms, but no one looked away. The energy had changed again. Brent put his hand up. "We'll give the last panelist 5 minutes to finish before we move on to the open floor." But Trump wasn't done yet. Not on her terms. He leaned closer and looked straight at Jasmine. He started by saying, "You want people to think you're the new face of truth in Washington," and then he stopped to find the appropriate words. "But what you really are is a loud distraction. You roll papers, wave sticks, and expect others to get down on their knees." Jasmine didn't move. "No," she answered, her voice calm yet sharp. "I want people to think." Trump said something under his breath that was loud enough for the boom mic to pick up before Brent could say anything. It wasn't just rude, it was personal. Brent said softly, "What did he just say?" The room had also heard it. Jasmine's face didn't change, but her helpers in the front row got tense. The audio tech said that the murmur had been recorded. Trump added, "She has the energy of an angry black woman, barking all the time, never thinking." The people in the crowd stopped moving. Jasmine's aides seemed nervous, but she didn't even blink. "Could you say that again?" she said. Her voice was steady and unwavering. Trump blinked, evidently not expecting her to face him head on. "I didn't say anything," he mumbled. "You did," Jasmine said, her voice cutting across the air. Brent said, "We all heard it." Trump didn't care. "You might have heard wrong. You could just want some drama." But Jasmine wasn't done yet. "No, we want respect." She leaned in and pulled the mic closer. "This is what happens when women, especially black women, don't flinch when we talk in full sentences. When we talk about facts instead of feelings, people call us angry. We are turned into noise." The room responded. Some people clapped. Some people yelled support. You could feel the stress. Jasmine had the moment, and she wasn't going to let it go. Trump leaned back in his chair because his typical techniques of sarcasm, domination, and mocking weren't working. He was aware of it. This wasn't a meeting. This wasn't an easy interview. This was real. You know what? Trump lost it. This is why no one watches these things. It's all a show. You're here to get a news story. Good job, you got it. Jasmine didn't say anything. She looked at him and spoke calmly. She said, "I didn't come for a headline. I came for the record that will last longer than both of us." For a short time, Trump looked at her without saying a word. His typical rapid comebacks didn't work. He suddenly stood up, still mic'd and left without warning. Brent's voice broke as he fought to get everything back under control. Mr. President, we haven't finished yet." He turned to the crowd. He said, "This is a joke. We're letting extremists act like they care about the country while they tear it apart from the inside." He also told Jasmine, "You don't want the truth. You want attention. You got it then. Make the most of it while you can." He left his microphone on the table and ran off stage. Cameras followed him down the hallway until he went behind a closed door. The crowd was completely quiet. No cheers. No clapping. Just a strange quietness. Brent looked at Jasmine and tried to calm his voice. "Congresswoman, do you want to say something?" Jasmine took a moment to collect herself, her face calm. "I don't celebrate when someone leaves," she stated in a quiet voice. "That's not winning. But I will tell you what is, standing up for what you believe, and even when it makes others uncomfortable, and not letting their discomfort make you quiet." She folded her papers and spoke in a voice that was softer than before. "We've let loud men change the facts for too long. Let's quit calling it strength when it's just loudness. Stop calling it leadership when it's just ego." The camera quickly panned to the audience. They weren't cheering like they would at a rally, but they were paying attention. Everyone was looking. On the East Coast, cable news anchors were trying to establish the proper tone. The video of Trump's whispered comments spread like wildfire in a matter of hours. The fallout was only starting. A moment that shocked the whole country. One of the senior advisors commented, "I don't always agree with her politics," as they viewed the tape of Jasmine's moment. But what she just did, that was serious. Even on Truth Social, Trump supporters didn't all agree. Some people stood by him even more, while others said the comment was just a way to get out of a bad time. Brent got an update in his earpiece when he was in the Civic Center. He looked at Jasmine and spoke in a firm voice that showed how much he understood. He said, "We just found out that the president won't be coming back tonight." Jasmine nodded quietly, as if she had already known this would happen. The room was tense. Brent stared at the crowd to attempt to get things back under control. "Now we'll go on to questions for the panelists. If you're okay with that, Congresswoman Crockett." "I'm staying," Jasmine replied simply, and she meant it. "I came here to talk to the people." "That hasn't changed." The other members of the panel, who had mostly stayed quiet since the fight, started to move. Senator Howard Lynn from Oregon changed his notes, and a small change in his demeanor showed that the tension had broken. He cleared his throat and began, and his voice was very open. Lynn looked at Jasmine and said, "If I may, I think we should all talk about what just happened. If we don't say anything, we'll be guilty." Jasmine looked into his eyes. "Go ahead." Lynn nodded at her. "You didn't just come with receipts," he remarked. "You came with clarity." I suppose that scared him. Jasmine smiled for the first time, not with a smug look, but with a quiet, grateful look. It was important that someone else in the room see the change that had just happened. Outside in the parking lot, the protests were going on at the same time. Supporters yelled at each other, their chants reverberating off the street. "Be honest" came from one side, while Trump 2024 came from the other, rang out. But things had changed. It wasn't anarchy, it was judgment. Brent looked to the main camera as if he could feel the change in the air. "Tonight didn't go as planned," he continued, trying to get the audience's attention back. "But there are times when history doesn't ask for permission." Jasmine's phone buzzed as they were getting ready to end the section. There were too many alerts. CNN, MSNBC, and even conservative talk radio stations were asking for live interviews. People in America were still listening. It was almost midnight in Washington, yet the Capitol was still busy. Offices that would ordinarily close at 9 p.m. were still open, with staff members in their work uniforms watching the town hall rerun on a loop. Jasmine Crockett was more than just popular. She was the most important person in politics. 3 senior advisors sat in a small office on the 6th floor of the Republican National Committee and gazed at a muted television that showed Trump walking off. One of them kept rewinding the film to look at Trump's body language, the way he dropped the mic, and the flash of anger in his eyes. "This wasn't strategy," one aide finally said. "No," another person said. "This was panic." The Democrats were already hard at work down the hall. People were writing press releases that not only praised Jasmine but also built around her. Quotes, pictures, and messages were all being put together for the morning interviews. What Jasmine did wasn't just a moment that went viral. It was a rare thing, not filtered, not written down. Control in real time. And the whole country had seen it happen. Jasmine was back in Phoenix, sitting in a small green room with her phone vibrating all the time. She hadn't talked to any reporters yet, not even on Twitter. Her crew was clustered near the door, discreetly talking about whether or not they should start turning down interview requests. She glanced at her assistant, a young woman named Serena. "What's new?" Jasmine asked in a quiet voice. Serena looked at the television. "You are the top story on every news site. Going viral on 5 different sites. Fox says it's a planned ambush. CNN says it's a truth moment." Jasmine massaged her eyes and laughed dryly. "They're twisting it. Some others claim it was fake. Some people say I lured him in." Jasmine grinned a little. "I asked him questions and cited him. If that's baiting, maybe the bar has been too low for too long." A few reporters waited outside the green room. They weren't yelling or holding cameras. They were just holding pens. They wanted to talk, but Jasmine didn't budge. Not yet. Trump was pacing in a suite at the Westover Grand Hotel a few miles away. His staff was going crazy. One person gave him a tablet with clips that were already going around. Jasmine remained calm as she went over the numbers. The instant he rose up and left, he muttered something about angry black woman energy. One advisor replied urgently, "We need to respond." Trump's expression got tense. "She attacked me." One aide said cautiously, "No one made you say it." Everyone in the room stopped talking. That answer didn't sit well with Trump. It hurt because it was too true. At that point, early replies started coming in from Washington. Arizona Representative Jillian Lark wrote, "Truth held its ground tonight. I'm proud of Jasmine Crockett for being strong and telling the truth." Senator Paul Ryan, who doesn't like the left, tweeted an hour later, "You don't have to agree with Crockett to admit she was ready. She didn't leave. That means something." Meanwhile, in a small diner off I-10 in El Paso, a night crew of custodians had the TV on in the corner. They didn't say much, but as Jasmine's clip played again, a 58-year-old man named Jose, who worked nights to make extra money, pointed at the television. His voice was quiet, but sure as he said, "She didn't lie once." He was angry because he couldn't get rid of her. Deshaun, a bartender in Kansas City, played back the moment when Jasmine took out the USB. "That's the part," he said to a regular at the end of the bar. "That's when it changed. She had more than just words. She had proof." A high school civics teacher in Minneapolis changed the lesson plan for tomorrow so that his students would be ready to learn about what they had just seen. People weren't simply observing in hundreds of places like this, they were also conversing. Not about party lines, not the normal sound bites. They were discussing about what it looked like when someone wouldn't back down, not by yelling louder, but by maintaining calm, even when things went personal. Finally, Jasmine stood up in Phoenix. Serena gazed up at her. "Are you sure?" Jasmine nodded. "Yes, but don't answer him. I'll talk, but I won't react." That was never the point. A producer from NPR gently walked up to her outside the green room. "Congresswoman Crockett, would you mind saying a few words before you go?" Jasmine stopped. "Only if I can talk on my terms." The producer smiled. "That's the only kind of talking people want to hear tonight." Before Serena got on stage, she leaned over and whispered, "They didn't think you'd be calm." That's what beat him, Jasmine said, but she didn't say anything else. She just moved on, her eyes fixed on her goal. Jasmine Crockett's name was impossible to ignore by the time the sun rose over the Phoenix skyline. It was on the front pages of newspapers, in group chats, over coffee cups, in break rooms, and on every cable news ticker from Seattle to Tampa. Breakfast TV shows had to do rid of their original parts and start with the same headline: Crockett holds her ground, Trump walks out. Alvin, a retired soldier, sat in his recliner in Des Moines, Iowa, with a bowl of cereal and watched a rebroadcast of the town hall on Channel 5. His wife passed by and inquired, "Did he leave?" Alvin kept his eyes on the TV. Didn't even try to fight back. She had everything planned out. Graphs, quotes, dates. The man basically gave up. A morning radio station in St. Louis broadcast the audio of the off-mic comment 3 times in the first hour of their show. The host, who is normally calm, didn't hold back. This wasn't a mistake. This is what he says when he feels threatened. Staff at the White House rushed to fix the damage. They wrote, removed, and rewrote official declarations. Trump didn't say much on social media, so his advisors came up with excuses like being tired, getting tough questions, and media bias. But none of it worked. The walk-off wasn't only apparent. I will never forget it. You could see the exact moment his confidence broke. At the same time, Jasmine's team had to sort through a huge number of interview requests. She had said no to the loudest events, the screaming panels, and the people who wanted to go into politics. She didn't want to make things worse. Instead, she agreed to a quiet meeting with a local Austin station that has covered her while she was in the state Senate. She was on Central Texas that morning. No team for makeup, no group of people. She just had a navy blouse and her folder, which still had the same papers in it. The anchor, Eva Carr, glanced at her with interest. "You've become the name that everyone is talking about in the country overnight. How does that feel?" Jasmine smiled a little, which was heavy but not surprising. "You planned that moment?" "No," she responded, shaking her head. "I was going to tell the truth. After that, I had no control over what happened." The Journal-Tribune in Boston published an op-ed called "What Happens When Preparedness Meets Power" that praised her calmness and clarity. The piece said it's not often that someone holds the floor, not with fire, but with precision. Crockett didn't do anything. She kept going. Not everyone, though, was complimenting her. Some conservative media outlets said she was trying to set up a gotcha moment in politics. One person asked, was she there to debate or to destroy? But not everyone in the GOP was interested. Lane Harker, a former Republican strategist, was on a panel in the late morning and claimed she didn't destroy him. She told on him. There is a distinction. In other places, videos of regular Americans reacting to the town hall went viral. One of the most circulated videos was from a young man in Albuquerque who stopped the film right after Trump walked off and said, "That's what it looks like when someone runs out of lies." Lawmakers were already responding at the Capitol. A centrist senator from Ohio named Belinda Crane said in a statement that truth should never jeopardize leadership. "We need to think about what sort of leadership we're protecting if it does." Jasmine's inbox was full of messages, some of which were angry and others of which were thankful. But one thing was clear: Jasmine Crockett had changed the story, and people in America were paying attention. A moment of truth that was heard all over the country. A retired prison officer from Tallahassee said, "I never write to politicians, but I saw you last night and had to say thank you. You stayed calm." That mattered. Her staff started printing up some of the letters to post in their office, not as trophies, but as reminders of why she went to that studio in the first place. Jasmine put her folder on the table during a meeting with her staff later that morning and remarked, "If we respond to every insult, we'll lose our focus. People will hear us, though, if we keep talking clearly, even if it takes a minute." Serena looked up from her laptop and asked, "So, what do you want to do with all this attention?" Jasmine took a big breath. "Be careful with it. Not for me, for the truth." But while Jasmine was planning her next move, Trump's team secretly called off his next 3 interviews. The noise wouldn't stop, and now it had a name. By the end of the day, the talk had gone much beyond politics. Analysts weren't the only ones talking about what happened on that stage. People were also talking about it in classrooms, church basements, fire stations, and waiting rooms, not because it was exciting, but because it seemed real, raw, living, and too acute to ignore. Someone turned up the volume inside Roy's barbershop in Birmingham, Alabama, where CNN usually aired on silent. There were 3 chairs full, and 4 more males were waiting in line. The flat-screen TV above played the clip again. Jasmine calmly confronted the president, and Trump broke down and walked away. Roy rested his arms on the counter. Did you see how she didn't move? That was what scared him. Not what she said. What she said. One of the younger men nodded. She didn't want to be the loudest. She only had the facts. For him, that's worse than any insult. 2 women in their 70s in a cafe in Reno, Nevada, just off the freeway, passed a tablet back and forth to watch the town hall meeting again on YouTube. One person said, "She reminds me of Barbara Jordan." That same level of clarity. She doesn't care if it's popular, she just wants it to be correct. Her pal drank coffee. I don't care about politics like that, but last night was different. Like someone finally got up without making it a show. At the same time, a group of high school seniors in the suburbs of Detroit gathered around their civics teacher's desk at lunch. He had the town hall ready to go, with brief clips playing. The teacher stopped the film and added, "You don't have to agree with her politics, but please tell me what made her so good." One pupil raised her hand. She didn't take the bait, and when it got personal, she didn't back down. "Exactly," the teacher said. "That's how you win an argument without getting loud." It wasn't about getting famous on the internet anymore. It was about how things sounded. Something about Jasmine's voice, calm, steady, and unshaken, had cut through the clamor. And not just with the general public. A few Democratic strategists in Washington were already using new words. Jasmine Crockett was no longer just a member of Congress. She was a messenger, but not for a party. She was for a principle. That truth, when said clearly and backed up with proof, could still shake the most powerful man in the country. She didn't scream. She hadn't said anything harsh. She had only told the truth. And they really wanted it. Jasmine had invites to 3 college graduations, 2 book groups, and a Sunday service in New York in the hours after the show. Not political at all, just personal. People just wanted to hear from her. That change went to places no one thought it would. A man in Omaha's hardware shop shook his head while watching a loop of the town hall on his phone. He was sporting a "Don't Tread on Me" cap. "I didn't vote for her, but she was right," he added as he watched Jasmine's fight over and again. He got scared. That's not strength. A pastor in Jackson, Mississippi, changed the whole sermon to talk about expressing the truth when you're feeling arrogant. He said what Crockett said, being loud isn't the same as being right, and winning isn't the same as being honest. Jasmine hadn't written that down. It got out at the time, but now it was being said in places she had never been. Her parents called that night while she was sitting at her kitchen table in Dallas. Her mom's voice broke. "You didn't even speak up. That made me really happy." Jasmine smiled gently. "I couldn't pay for it." "You didn't go there to take him down," her dad said. "You went there to make your point. A big difference." Jasmine nodded. "Yeah, and I think people noticed that." They did. But before she could go to bed, her press manager emailed her with only one line. 60 Minutes wants to feature you next week. They say it has nothing to do with the drama. It's about the moment. By the end of the week, it was evident that the town hall had done more than just start a moment. It had started something harder to put a name to, a change. Not that big. Not going to explode. But steadily. It was how people talked about politics again at the dinner table without rolling their eyes. It was how people called into local radio stations, not to complain, but to ask questions. People didn't just want to react anymore. They wanted to know. Jasmine Crockett got that. The window of public attention doesn't endure long. But what about the truth? Truth stuck if you knew how to handle it. So she didn't hurry to take advantage. She was patient. 5 days after the town hall, she sat down for her first extensive interview. It wasn't a good moment to be on. No panels that yell, no fancy visuals. Public Focus is a long-running PBS show that is more known for its content than its ratings. The interview was silent. The set was easy. No one in the audience. Only 2 chairs. Jasmine wore navy again. This time, no folder. No Yelp stick. Only her voice. Derek Lynn, the host, leaned forward. "Why do you think your words had such an affect?" She didn't even blink. "Because I didn't want to go viral. I was trying to get it right. And people know the difference." He asked, "Was it personal when he said that?" "Of course," she answered, "but I wasn't surprised. I've heard that kind of thing before. It's just not normally uttered into a hot mic. What made you stay calm?" She took a moment to think. Knowing the truth was louder than anything he could say about me. Derek later asked, "What do you hope people learned from that night?" Jasmine didn't practice. "I hope people saw that you don't have to be as chaotic as someone else to deal with them. That facts still matter, and that you can hold those in authority accountable without being mean." The video was shown that Sunday and got millions of views, not because it was shocking, but because it was honest. It didn't seem like a takedown. It felt like a memory. Even lawmakers who had been quiet all week began to talk about what she said. At a Senate hearing, one member said again what she had said before: "Bring the whole tree, not just the cherries." A mayor in Michigan applauded her for staying calm under pressure at a town hall meeting. In those little ripple-like moments, Jasmine's effect grew stronger, not just in the news, but also in the way others talked about her. The next week, she went back to her district. There were no rallies or reporters. She just went to her usual places: a rec facility in Garland, a housing meeting in Longview, and a small business roundtable in Tyler. A young woman quietly walked up to her at the end of one session, holding a spiral notebook full with scribbles. "Can I ask you a question?" Jasmine grinned. "Of course." "When he said what he said, how did you not go crazy?" She stopped for a moment, then added softly, "Because that's what he wanted. That clip would have gone around too if I had lost control. But for the wrong reason." The kid nodded, and Jasmine went on, "If you're the only one in the room who is telling the truth, don't let anyone talk you into yelling. Say it. Stand on it. Let them fight." That night, she scribbled a small note in her diary, something she had been doing for years. The truth doesn't shout. It just remains up. She didn't need the news stories, the retweets, or the interviews. She had to be ready, because the job wasn't done yet. The town hall didn't fix anything overnight. It didn't change the elections. It didn't get rid of false information or change people's minds. But it did something just as important. It showed people what being accountable could look like. What it really means to stay calm under pressure. What happens when someone enters into a room full of cameras and won't bend? Not for attention, not for clapping, not for strength. But the truth deserved better. That night, Jasmine Crockett didn't win by being the best in the room. She won because she wouldn't leave it. And that left an imprint much deeper than any soundbite. If that moment moved you, if it reminded you that truth still has a place in the chaos, share this story. Subscribe and join the conversation that doesn't just talk, but listens before speaking. We need more voices like Jasmine's, voices that stand firm for what's right, even when it's hard. Together, we can make sure the truth never goes silent.